Good afternoon. I had a request from a colleague to give a demonstration of how to do something custom in the labs, whether it's some setting that you want to change in the registry or some desktop shortcuts you want to create, or anything more advanced than that. I just want to give like a 30,000 foot overview of configuration baselines because that's primarily how we're doing this. And then I'll dive into a couple of examples. And then after that, I'll go into how you can do customizations as an application, which can be easier if you just have one to do once in a while. That might be an easier lift and kind of get you into application packaging potentially. But anyway, let's take a look at these configuration baselines. So we're in SCCM or MECM as it's called now on the Assets and Compliance tab. After all of the device information in the device collections, you'll find this Compliance Settings folder, and that contains compliance items, or sorry, configuration items and configuration baselines. What baselines are is very simple. They are a collection of they're a combination of both configuration items and configuration baselines. So like, for example, enable RDP with firewall rules. If we take a look at that, we'll see what makes it up, what it's comprised of. Um, so what we have here are three configuration items. I like to put CI dash before the configuration items. It's not my nomenclature. It was a standard that was already established when I started using this system, but I like it and I maintain it so that I can tell the difference easily between configuration items and baselines in these lists. Um, okay, so that's really all a configuration baseline is that collection of configuration items and other baselines. I tend to keep it really simple with the configuration baselines. I personally would rather have 10 different baselines that I can deploy individually than maybe try to stick 5 of them in one baseline and then someday run into some exception I didn't see coming. And now I've got to kind of undo some work and trace down the other guys that had that old deployment. And it's just easier for me to sign myself up for a little bit more work in the beginning so that I don't have to unravel one of those situations down the road. So anyway, enough talking about this as a 30-foot thousand view for the baselines. Let's look at the items because this is, as they say, where the magic happens. Um, and we're doing, just to give you an idea of what you can do with configuration items and baselines, we're doing everything that we used to do with group policy, everything we're doing with baselines now. As far as I'm aware, as far as my engineering goes here, that's without exception. We found a way to do everything, including adding AD groups to local admins, adding individual users to AD admins, setting up auto logon. And you can see the list here. Here's some desktop icon examples if you need to borrow from that. Um, you can see from the naming conventions that I like to be really, really clear in my title what it does. And just maybe even to go to a 60,000 foot view, this is all in an effort to make the machines that are out in the field as self-healing as possible. Meaning, if one of these desktop icons is removed, it needs to come back because that's the desired state of that desktop on that machine. And we know that, and we have the technology to enforce that. So that's what we're trying to do here. Whether it's adding it or removing it, we have to make an individual configuration item for that because if I just stop deploying that, the icon will stay there until somebody removes it. All this really does is it says, is that icon there? If not, install it. Um, so What would be a good example here? So this might be a bad one. I'm not sure. Forgive me, I didn't have something already prepared here. But essentially, there's like 4 or 5 different things that you can make a configuration item on uh, from registry settings. So basically, you tell it what registry key or value you want to have a particular value, and it will check that and remediate it. And that's where I started, but now I try to do everything with a PowerShell script type of setting. Um, for a couple of reasons. One is that I know exactly what it's going to do. There's no black box. I've written everything that will happen to it, so there's no surprises. The other thing is that I back these scripts up to GitHub and to my computer and to a cloud storage uh, service so that if something terrible ever happens to SCCM, I still have my configuration items or at least some templates to work from. I can't say that I back them all up. Okay, but I do back up templates and examples. And that's something you can't do if you just do registry settings. So here we have we're setting a few PowerShell variables, a path and registry. We get those items. We say our error action is to silently continue, and we set an error variable. This is a thing that I've picked up that really streamlines a lot of PowerShell scripting where I really don't care if there's an error. It's a perfectly valid response to what I'm trying to do, but I do want to keep moving and I want to catch the fact that there was an error and do something about it. So I also set a variable I call the truth just because I like to have fun with things, and I call that compliant. So now I say if there was an error variable, checking that registry, which basically means it doesn't exist yet, then just say that this is not compliant because we're not there. We're not where we need to be because that reg key isn't even there. But if it is there, we keep going. And actually, I think we keep going either way. But we've already said that this is non-compliant. What I try to do is I try to set everything to compliant in the beginning. I want to be that teacher that says you have an A on day one, and now it's your job to keep that A. So you're compliant out of the gate, but if you fail any of these checks, now you're non-compliant, and I never set it back to compliant anywhere for any reason. So anyway, just that's the way this is working. That's my coding style. You don't have to do it like that for sure. The basic concept here is that you use PowerShell to check what's going on if things are the way that they need to be, and you output in plain text a word. It doesn't even have to be compliant. It could be yes, no. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have compliance checks that remediate based on what it found or call it compliant. So anyway, sticking with the conventions, I call it compliant. If there was an error, now we're non-compliant. So now we check a deeper reg key, uh, get the items, and if there was an error, we're definitely non-compliant. And now we check the sub keys, and this is just sort of saying if it's not 90, well, we're non-compliant. So if any of those checks fail, what happens is we create that. Um, Again, this is just my way of doing it. I have kind of like a steamroller approach to it where I say make a new reg key, and if it's already there and you're going to create an error because I asked you to do something that you didn't have to do, then just that's nice, keep going. Then I set the value, which you know assumes that the reg key is there, but it needs to be there by this point, and that's fine. And you kind of see the idea here is I don't really want to do a whole lot of if else, but I do need to handle those errors, and this is just how I do it. Um, and then we set that item property. So that's just one example of how we can check reg keys and set reg keys, which is basically most of what group policy is to begin with. That's how we can do this with configuration items and baselines. So um, this is for one reg key. you can definitely do 10, 100 reg keys in one configuration item, and if any of them are non-compliant, you set them all. I have done that before. I'm trying to get away from it if, unless it's an example where I will always set all of those reg keys. I tend to try to keep things as modular as possible so I can swap things out without wondering if I broke something. Um, Checking out the icon one, I'll leave that to you if that's one you're looking to do. They're there for the looking. We set firewall rules. Um, we A good example of the power of these configuration items and baselines is this thing that we've started doing this year, where we are managing our cups printer fleet with configuration items and baselines. Um, and it's actually a lot. It looks like a lot, and it is a lot of configuration items. But the cool thing is that we have a script that generates these, and does a lot of the magic behind the scenes, like puts it in this here folder. If this configuration item already exists, it removes it from the configuration baseline, deletes it, recreates it, adds it back. It does everything but mess with the deployments, which is great because that's something that probably should still be up to us to go ahead and pull that trigger when it's the right time. Um, but let's take a look at, okay, so the way that this one works is we have campus, lab, and then printer name. So if we look at this, and keep in mind this was made by a robot, so um, none of this was actually handwritten. Um, and another benefit of that was, when I was managing this manually, I was making copy paste mistakes because I'm only a human. Um, so having that script make it has been amazing. And I got to thank our sysadmin team for handing that gem over. So if you look at this, the cool thing about this is we're not checking reg keys. We're just using PowerShell's get printer. So what we're doing here is we're saying, we're going into the system. We're saying get printer, the name of the printer, and containing the error carnage. And then we say, if there was any error carnage, we're non-compliant. Otherwise, we're compliant. If there was error carnage, now we're using some seriously old school print DLL run 32 stuff that I can't claim to understand, but I copy and paste it and it works, and I don't ask too many questions. That's actually not entirely true, but for the most part. And we also add this command at the bottom to disable the advanced printing features. So there's a lot of power here, and all I have to do now is go into these printers configuration baselines and deploy them to a lab, and that lab will get those printers, and if those printers ever fall off, they'll come right back, just like with group policy. And if we ever want to remove those printers, we have a script that we can run. um, I don't know if everyone has permission to run these scripts or not. If not, just send us a ticket and we will definitely take care of that. It's very easy, and really benign, because if you just delete everybody's printers, they'll come back with the baseline that's assigned to them or deployed to them. But if I go in here and I go run script, I can choose this one that says remove all printers from a lab machine. And if I run that against this collection, those machines that are on will just have that script run against them, as if I sat down, logged in, pulled up a PowerShell admin window, technically opened PSExec, and then ran it. Um, but yeah, that's cool. That's how we do that with configuration baselines. If you wanted to do a customization that did something a little bit more, like it put some files in a place, because these PowerShell scripts don't have files that come with them, like attachments or included files or anything like that. They're just a script. So if you wanted to do some file moving with that, like from a network location, you'd have to set it up that way. And that's super unreliable way to do that. So I would not recommend that because, someday those files will go missing or whatever. Um, what I prefer to do is I prefer to make a PowerShell app deploy toolkit package and then deploy that customization or have it in my task sequence as an application. Um, there's some serious advantages to this, like you can have it in your task sequence. Configuration baselines aren't included in the task sequence. There's no way to do that. And on top of that, there's no way to tell the machine in the task sequence. As far as I know, and I feel like I've tried everything, to get that machine to check in and evaluate its baselines before, say, it's been turned on and left on for an hour or turned on and logged into for a while. Um, it's not, I don't know if it's provisioning mode that's causing that or what, but it's very, for me, it's a little bit frustrating because I have to hard code those baselines in to a PowerShell script step in the task sequence in order to make it happen. But and that's not very elegant at all. But the reason for that is that people kind of expect the lab machines to be darn near picture perfect when they come up for the first time, rather than sit there and reboot them 10 times. And I can understand that, so that's why we have that happening. But let's see. I know I did some for Farmington, and definitely did quite a few for USM. Um, Yeah, so like this one set users as local admins. That's something that I would do with a baseline now. This was back when my kung fu was no good, not good at all, bad kung fu. Oh, I know a good one. We have a package for branding, so marketing. So this package checks the registry to find what campus you belong to, and then it installs a wallpaper and a lock screen and sets that registry for the lock screen, and then sets for all users past, present, and future, which is an awesome feature of PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, is that you can set user-based registry settings for all users past, present, and future. Super amazingly powerful trick. There's probably a way to do that without that toolkit, but man, do they make it easy. Anyway, we do that right here, and this comes with, of course, the wallpapers, and they get saved locally to the machine, so there's never a network drop causing a black screen or something like that. At least that's the intent. So if you wanted an example of how to do a customization for your labs using an app instead of a PowerShell script driven baseline, that's a good one to go check out and steal code from. It's only as complicated as it needs to be, which is nice. Um, so yeah, I mean that's basically it. You can make an application using the PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit. You can make a PowerShell script, and I can show you how to do the fun configuration baseline stuff. And I don't say that sarcastically. It is really amazing how powerful that is. Um, and yeah, once we saw that, we turned away from group policy altogether because being able to pinpoint machine settings, which is all we really care about in the labs, is machine settings. Of course, you could do it for users, but anyway, being able to, pinpoint a single machine with a group policy type setting is so amazingly powerful, and it's flat, so you don't have to worry about sub OUs and things like that, security groups. It's just collection driven, PowerShell driven, your code instead of some checkbox that may or may not work. It's pretty awesome. So anyway, that's my little pitch for configuration baselines, and hopefully that helps explain how you can customize your labs. If you want a one-on-one Zoom session with Q&A, feel free to send us a ticket or an email to eut-group@maine.edu, and we'll set that up and help you customize your lab. Anyway, I hope you're having a good one. If you want any more videos explaining one thing or another, also send us a request and we will make it happen. Have a good one.